Owen Kessler came home at midnight to sign the papers that would move his father out of the house. What he found in the sunroom made him grab the doorframe and hold on. The plane touched down at Milwaukee at 11:40, 40 minutes late. In a cold October rain, he had flown up from Dallas after a groundbreaking, call, still in the same charcoal suit, still with the ceremonial shovel dirt on his cuff. 41 hotels bore his name. The brochure in his briefcase bore his father's, Meadowlark Cove. Memory care, Tier 1. 211 days on the waiting list and the room had finally opened. Vincent Hale had texted him during the flight, Room 4C, they need an answer by Friday. The driver took Sheridan Road north with the wipers going. Owen watched the lake move black past the trees. He had grown up on this road. He had not driven it in daylight in over a year. The house came up on the left low and long against the water, the way his mother had wanted it built. Ruth Kessler had died 6 years ago in the front bedroom with the window open because she liked the sound of the waves. His father had insisted on the open window. Nobody argued with Walter Kessler about air. Owen let himself in. The foyer smelled like lemon polish and cold stone. Every lamp was off except one, far back past the kitchen where the sunroom faced the water, and then he heard it, not a voice, a sound he could not place, small and dry, over and over, a whisper almost, crease, crease, crease. He stood in the dark hallway with his briefcase in his hand and listened to it. He thought maybe it was the radiator, he thought maybe it was the rain. Then a man laughed, his father laughed, low, cracked, surprised, like a man who had not expected to. Owen had not heard that sound since before the funeral. He walked toward it. His shoes were loud on the tile and he did not care. The sunroom door was open 8 inches, and the light coming through it was warm and yellow, the kind of light you only get from a lamp somebody bothered to move. His father sat in the armchair by the window with a blanket across his knees. 79 years old, silver hair combed, reading glasses pushed up on his head, though nobody had asked him to read anything in over a year. Walter Kessler's hands were moving. He had a sheet of paper. He was folding it, not fumbling, not picking at it, folding it with a speed and an accuracy that made no sense at all. A man whose fingers had forgotten how to hold a spoon, folding paper like a machine, thumbnail down the seam, sharp, exact, the same crease he had made 10,000 times in a life that had ended when the words started disappearing. Across from him, sitting on a low stool she had pulled up from the kitchen, was a woman in a black uniform. Night shift, kitchen. Owen knew the uniform but not the face. She was not helping him. She was just watching his hands with her chin in her palm. Okay, she said. Now the nose. Walter turned the paper. He pinched the point. He made one small fold, tucked it under itself and pressed with his thumb. There it is, she said quietly. His father lifted the paper airplane to eye level. He turned it, checked something along the wing that only he could see, and then he did something that stopped Owen's heart in his chest. He rotated the plane slowly in the air and he pointed its nose at her, and he let it go. It sailed 4 feet and landed nose down in her lap. She caught it against her apron with both hands. Careful, the way you catch something breakable. Contact, Walter said. It was the first full word Owen had heard his father say in 11 weeks. The floor creaked. She turned. She did not jump up. She did not start explaining. She looked at the man in the doorway and then she looked back at Walter and she put one hand on the arm of his chair so he would know she was still there before she stood. Mr. Kessler, she said. Owen could not answer her. He was looking at his father and his father was looking at him, and there was nothing in his father's face, no recognition. None. Walter Kessler studied him with the mild, patient interest of a man watching a stranger read a bus schedule. Then Walter reached for another sheet of paper on the side table and started folding again. Owen set his briefcase down on the tile. He did not remember deciding to. Her name was Marisol Reyes. She was 33. She had been on the estate payroll for 5 months as night kitchen staff, which meant she came in at 8 to prep for the morning, and left at 4 in the dark. He learned this in his own kitchen at 1 in the morning, standing under the pendant lights with his tie still on, while she stood on the other side of the island, with her hands folded in front of her like a woman, waiting for a verdict she had already predicted. Your kitchen, he said. Yes, sir. So explain to me why kitchen is upstairs in my father's sunroom at midnight, because nobody else is. He had not expected that. He had expected an apology. There are 3 overnight aides in this house. Yes, sir, there are, she said it evenly. Miss Bright watches the monitor from the hall. Mr. Sandoval checks his vitals at 11 and 3. They're very good at their jobs. But he doesn't sleep, sir. He sits up. He gets frightened around 11 and he tries to go outside, and when they stop him he pushes. She paused. So they stopped letting him have the door, and then he stopped asking, and then he stopped talking. Owen felt something turn over behind his ribs. He shut it down the way he shut down anything that showed up in a meeting without being on the agenda. That's called sundowning, he said. It's in the reports. Yes, sir, it's in the reports. You've read the reports? No, sir, I just know what it's called. The refrigerator hummed. Outside the rain had stopped and the gutters were still running. How long has this been happening, he said. Sir, the paper. How long? 9 weeks. Owen put both hands flat on the marble. He looked down at them. 9 weeks, he repeated. I found him in the pantry one night. He'd gotten hold of the notepad we use for the produce order. He'd made 22 of them. She stopped. They were all the same, sir, every single one, exactly the same. He did not want to hear the rest of it. He wanted very badly to hear the rest of it. His hands remember, she said. The rest of him doesn't. But his hands do. Owen stood in his mother's kitchen at 1 in the morning and thought about the fact that a woman who prepped grapefruit had learned this, and 11 medical professionals and 1 son had not. Then the other thing rose up in him. The thing that had built 41 hotels. It came up hard and fast, like a hand grabbing a rail. Mr. Boone, he said, not raising his voice. Curtis Boone appeared in the doorway in a bathrobe, gray and unhurried the way he had appeared in doorways for 22 years. Sir, by 8 this morning I want the full staffing file. Every person assigned to my father. Agency, hours, credentials, background clearance, salary, incident reports, the last 12 months. And I want to know who authorized non-medical personnel to have unsupervised contact with him at night. Yes, sir. Mrs. Reyes did not move. She did not look down either. Miss Reyes, Owen said. Sir, this house has protocols. My father is medically fragile. He is not a hobby. Something crossed her face then. Not fear, no sir, she said. He's your father. Curtis Boone found something to look at on the floor. The refrigerator hummed. Owen Kessler stood in the kitchen with his tie on and could not think of a single thing to say. He did not sign the papers on Friday. He told himself it was because he wanted a second neurological opinion. He told himself it was because Meadowlark's contract had a 90-day non-refundable clause, and he never signed anything with a 90-day non-refundable clause. He canceled a call with Dallas. Then he canceled a dinner. Then he stayed. Dr. Elaine Pham drove up from Northwestern on Wednesday. She was a small, blunt woman in her 60s who had been treating Walter for 3 years and had stopped softening sometime in year 1. She sat with him for 40 minutes. She said his name. She held up a pen. She asked him what day it was, and Walter looked at the window and said, later. Then Marisol came in with the tray and set a sheet of paper on his blanket without a word, and went to check the thermostat. Walter's hand stopped on writing. Owen watched her watch it. He watched the exact moment her face changed. How long? She said quietly. 9 weeks. 9 weeks. She took her glasses off. Mr. Kessler, I want to be very careful here. Then be careful. This is not improvement. I need you to hear that. The atrophy is what it is. His language will not come back. He is not going to wake up one morning and be who he was. Then what am I looking at? Dr. Pham looked at the old man folding paper in the yellow light. Procedural memory, she said. It lives somewhere else. It's older than words. Your father did this so many times that his hands learned it below the level of thinking, and the disease hasn't gotten down that far. She put her glasses back on. That's the medicine. Do you want the other part? Yes, everyone in this house speaks to your father like a chart. She said it without heat, which made it worse. Miss Reyes speaks to him like a man who is still sitting in the room. That is not a treatment, but it is the reason he is talking, and I would not take it away from him. Owen looked at Marisol, who was adjusting the vent so the air would not blow directly on his father's neck. Nobody had asked her to. There was no line in any report about the vent. He had read every report, 14 months of them. Weekly summaries, monthly invoices, staff rotations, nutrition logs, pharmacy reconciliations. He had read them on planes. He had read them in green rooms before keynotes. He had paid every one of them within 9 days, and he had missed the vent. The bad things surfaced that night the way the bad things do, uninvited at 2 in the morning. 14 months ago Owen had come out for Easter, Ruth's silver, the good tablecloth, all of it, and his father had been having a good week, lucid, sharp even. He had told a story about a hangar in Wichita in 1971 and gotten every name right. And at the end of the meal Walter Kessler had put his hand on his son's wrist and said, Ollie, stay for supper tomorrow. And Owen, with his phone in his other hand and a car idling in the drive, had said without thinking, without any cruelty at all, the 4 words he now heard every time he closed his eyes. Let me check my calendar. He had not come back for supper. Something in Miami. He remembered the something. He could not remember what it was for. Nobody had ever called him Ollie except his father and his mother, and one of them was dead. He started coming down for breakfast. The first morning he sat across from Walter and did not know what to do with his hands. He was used to rooms that arranged themselves around him. Boards waited. Lawyers listened. Contractors moved. This room did not care who he was. It moved at his father's speed. And his father's speed was set by a woman in a black uniform who had figured out that Walter would eat if you put the fork in his left hand and then talked about something else entirely. He doesn't like being watched eating, Marisol said when Owen asked, would you? She never once said he can't. He listened for it. 2 weeks and she never said it, she said. Let's see, she said, try it this way. She said that's all right, we'll do it later. On the 3rd morning Owen said, he used to do the crossword in ink. She did not look up. He does the crossword in ink, she said. Owen stopped. He hasn't touched a crossword in a year. That's not what you said, sir. You said used to. The coffee ran. The gutter dripped. Outside on the water a boat went by that neither of them looked at. She set the pot down and finally met his eyes, and there was no triumph in her face at all, Only a kind of tiredness. I'm sorry, she said. I've heard it a lot. In every house I've worked. People start putting them in the past while they're still in the chair. Owen looked at his father. Walter had one thumb pressed against the rim of a green mug with a chipped handle. The same mug he had used since 1988, the one Ruth had tried 9 separate times to throw away. Does, Owen said. Does the crossword? Yes, sir. He learned the language in pieces. 3 taps on the wall meant the light was too bright. Walter had turned off every light in his life by tapping the switch plate 3 times, and now when a lamp bothered him, his hand went out and tapped the wall beside it 3 times, and waited. A hand flat on the tabletop meant he was cold, and the airplanes meant something Owen could not decode until the 11th day. Marisol handed Walter a sheet and Walter folded it, and Owen was standing by the bookshelf pretending to look at spines. Walter finished. He held the plane up, he turned it checking the wing, then he moved it slowly through the air and pointed the nose at Marisol and let go. He always points it, Owen said. Marisol caught it. Yes, at you? So far, yes. Why? She turned the little plane over in her fingers and did not answer for long enough that he thought she wouldn't. When you throw a paper airplane, she said, you throw it away from you. You want it to go far. He doesn't. She set it on the table between them, nose facing Owen, and pushed it an inch closer. He aims it, he's giving it to somebody. Owen looked at the plane pointed at his chest. His father had not given it to him, she had. He's choosing, Owen said. Yes, sir. He went upstairs and sat on the edge of his bed for a long time without turning on the light. On the 14th night, he could not sleep, and he went down for water at 3, and he saw a paper airplane sitting on the windowsill above the kitchen sink. Not one of his father's. The folds were wrong, clumsy on the left wing. He was still holding it when Marisol came in with the produce list. She stopped. She saw what was in his hand. Her face did something complicated and then settled. That one's mine, she said. You made this. I'm learning. I'm bad at it. Owen turned it over. The nose is right. He fixed the nose. She said it plainly. He took it out of my hands and fixed it and gave it back. Owen set it down very carefully on the sill, exactly where it had been. Miss Reyes, he said, where did you learn to do this? She got the pen out of her apron pocket. She uncapped it. She put it back. My mother was Esperanza Reyes, she said. She was 58 when she started forgetting the stove. 61 when she stopped knowing my name. The clock on the oven read 3:11. I moved back to Rockford, she said. 4 years I did what you do, I corrected her. Every time she got something wrong I said, no mama, it's Tuesday, no mama, Papa died, no mama, I'm Marisol, I'm your daughter, look at me. I did that for 8 months. She pressed her lips together. It's the cruelest thing I have ever done to another person, sir, and I did it because I loved her and I wanted her back. Owen did not move, and one day I was crying at the kitchen table and she came up behind me and she started braiding my hair. Marisol's voice stayed steady. It was the steadiness of a thing said many times alone to no one. She didn't know my name. Her hands knew my hair. She braided it exactly the way she did when I was 6, and she hummed, and I sat there and I let her, and I stopped correcting her, and we had 2.5 more years. The refrigerator cycled off. The kitchen was very quiet. She never remembered who I was, Marisol said. She never once forgot that I stayed. Owen looked at the clumsy airplane on the windowsill with its perfect nose. I'll leave if you want me to, she said. I know I'm not supposed to be up there. No, he said. His voice came out wrong. He tried again. No, he said. Stay. Vincent Hale drove up on a Tuesday in a cashmere quarter-zip and canvas sneakers, which was how Vincent Hale dressed when he intended to be reasonable. They had roomed together at Northwestern. Vincent had held Owen's mother's hand at her funeral when Owen could not. He had structured every deal for 19 years and he had never once been wrong about the arithmetic of anything. Ollie, he said in the foyer, don't, sorry, force of habit. Vincent set a leather folder on the console table. Medaller called Friday came and went. I'm aware. 4C is a corner. South Light. Do you know what the weight is on a corner? Owen said nothing. From down the hall came the small dry sound. Crease, crease. Vincent tilted his head at it. What is that? That's him. Vincent walked toward the sunroom. Owen followed and it occurred to him halfway down the hall that he was following a guest into his own father's room. Walter sat in the light with the blanket on his knees. Marisol stood by the window out of the way she always stood, near enough to reach him in 2 steps. Vincent looked at the old man, then at the woman, then at the drift of folded paper airplanes on the side table, 11 of them, noses all facing the same chair. Well, Vincent said warmly. Isn't this nice? He sat down across from Walter, leaned forward, elbows on knees, and spoke in a clear, kind, carrying voice. How's he doing? Marisol did not answer. Is he eating? Because the last labs I saw the album in. Sir, Marisol said. Vincent turned pleasant. I'm sorry? He can hear you. The room got very still. He's right there, she said. Vincent smiled, did not move. Miss Reyes. Miss Reyes. I've known this family for 20 years. I don't think. Then ask him, she said. Ask him what? Ask him how he's doing. He's sitting right in front of you. Her voice never rose. Owen had begun to understand that it never would. You've been in this room 90 seconds and you haven't said his name once. Vincent Hale looked at Owen, waiting for his friend to handle this. Owen looked at his father, who was watching Vincent's mouth with mild, patient interest, the way he had once watched his own son in the doorway. "Say his name, Vincent," Owen said. Vincent laughed once, uncertainly. Then he turned back and said, "Walter, how are you feeling today?" Walter Kessler blinked, his hand came up. Marisol crossed the room and switched it times. Marisol crossed the room and switched it off. He came back the following Monday. He was never rude. That was the thing Owen kept trying to explain to himself later in the dark. Vincent Hale was never once rude. He asked Curtis Boone which agency had placed the kitchen staff. He asked, in the pantry, in front of the cook, whether anyone had checked how long Miss Reyes was staying past 4, and whether she was being paid for it, because if she wasn't, that was a liability and he only mentioned it because he cared. He said it exactly like that. "I only mention it because I care." And a week later 3 people in that house were quietly watching the clock when Marisol Reyes left. On the second Monday he was in Owen's study before Owen got there, with the leather folder open on the desk. "Sit down," Vincent said, and then heard himself and smiled. Owen sat down. Placement agency intake form, employment history. 2 years unaccounted for, 2019 to 2021. She was caring for her mother. That's what she told you. That's what happened. Vincent turned a page. There's no CNA, no home health aid certification, no credential of any kind, Ollie. She prepped fruit. Owen looked at the folder and did not touch it. "Your father has a documented pushing incident from March," Vincent said. "If he goes down the sunroom steps at midnight with a kitchen employee, do you understand what that is? It's not a tragedy, it's a headline. Hotel magnate's father dies in unsupervised fall. It's 41 properties, and it's your mother's house, and it's your name, and Walter built that name before you could tie your shoes." He closed the folder gently. "I like her," Vincent said. "I want that on the record. She's clearly a lovely person, but affection is a care plan." There it was, small enough to deny, sharp enough to grow. Owen looked out the window at the lake and thought about how many times in 19 years Vincent Hale had said something like that to him and been right. "She got him talking," Owen said. "Did she? Or did he say a word, and we all decided it meant something?" Vincent stood. He put a hand on his friend's shoulder and he meant it. That was the worst part. He genuinely meant it. "You're not a bad son, Ollie, you're a tired one. Let the professionals carry it. That's what money is for." He left the folder on the desk. Owen sat there until the lake went dark, and then he went down the hall and stood outside the sunroom for a while without going in. Inside, Marisol was reading the produce order out loud to his father because the sound of a list apparently was soothing. 6 flats of strawberries. 2 cases of romaine. "Miss Reyes," Owen said from the doorway. She looked up. "Is he a bad son?" She knew immediately who he meant. She looked at Walter and then back at Owen, and she took her time. She said, "You're not a cruel man, I've worked for cruel men." "Then say the rest of it." She hesitated. It isn't my place." "Say it." Marisol Reyes set the produce list down on her knee. "You're a busy one," she said. "That's worse, sir. Cruelty a man knows he has to answer for. Busy sounds like a reason. It happened on a Sunday." Vincent came with a woman from Meadowlark, a placement coordinator with a folio and a warm, practiced calm. Dr. Pham came because Owen had asked her to. Curtis Boone stood by the door with his hands behind his back. They arranged themselves in the sunroom. Walter sat in his chair by the window with the light coming off the water, and the coordinator opened her folio and began to talk about Walter Kessler as though Walter Kessler were in Arizona already. "And the residents in 4C have the corner exposure, which is really lovely for someone in his stage because at his stage the visual field." "Sir," Marisol said. Owen raised his hand. Let her finish. He had rehearsed this. He had told himself he needed to hear the whole thing, and it was true and it was also cowardice, and both of those were true at the same time. Which he had learned in the last month is how most cowardice actually works. The coordinator kept going. "Stage, decline, level of function, behavioral events." She said he 40 times and never once said Mr. Kessler. And Owen sat in his mother's sunroom, listening to a stranger explain his father's future to everyone in the room except his father. Marisol moved. She crossed behind the chair, quiet, and she set a single sheet of white paper on Walter's blanket, and she stepped back to the window. Vincent saw it. "Miss Reyes, we're in the middle of..." Walter's hands found the paper. "Fold. Turn. Thumbnail down the seam." The coordinator stopped talking. "Fold. Turn. Press." Nobody in that room said anything at all. Dr. Pham had gone completely still with her pen an inch off the page. Curtis Boone was watching the old man's hands the way a man watches a horse come up the outside. Walter pinched the point. He tucked the nose under itself. He pressed with his thumb the fold he had invented in a hangar in Wichita in 1971 and had shown to a 7-year-old boy on a grass strip in Lake County on a Sunday morning with cocoa in a blue thermos. He held it up, he turned it, he checked the wing, and then Walter Kessler looked past all of them, across the room, and found the man in the charcoal suit sitting on the edge of a chair with his hands hanging between his knees, and his eyes changed. "Ollie," he said. Owen made a sound. He put his hand over his mouth. 14 months. 11 weeks since a whole word. And it was his name. In his father's voice, the name only 2 people in the world had ever used, and one of them was in the ground with the lake behind her. Dad, Owen said. He came out of the chair and onto his knees on the rug in front of the wheelchair, and he was 47 years old and he did not care what it looked like. Dad, I'm here, I'm right here. Walter looked at him with enormous care. Then he lifted the paper airplane, and he turned it slowly in the air, and he pointed the nose at Marisol Reyes, and he let it go. It sailed across the sunroom past the placement coordinator, past Vincent Hale, past Dr. Pham, and it struck Marisol in the collarbone and dropped, and she caught it against her apron with both hands. The whole room heard her breathe in. Owen stayed on his knees on his mother's rug. His father had remembered him. His father knew exactly who was in her. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then the coordinator cleared her throat and said, brightly, "Well, that's a wonderful response, that's really get out," Owen said. He said it very quietly to the rug. Vincent stood up. "Ollie, not you." Owen got to his feet. His knees hurt. "You stay." The coordinator left. Curtis Boone walked her to the car with the folio she never got to close. Owen turned to Vincent Hale and found that the anger he had been carrying up his spine for a month was simply gone, and what was underneath it was much older and much quieter. "He knew me," Owen said. "I saw and he gave it to her." Vincent had the grace not to answer. "You asked me if a word means something." Owen's voice was rough. "That word meant he knew who I was. And he still didn't hand it to me, Vincent. Because he's been in this house for 14 months and I have been a signature on a wire transfer." He looked at the drift of airplanes on the side table. "She's not qualified, you're right. She's got no certificate. She's got no letters after her name." She sat down. "You cannot run a company on guilt." "It isn't guilt, then what is it?" Owen looked at his father, who had gone back to the window and the water, and whose hands lay still and empty on the blanket waiting for someone to give him a sheet of paper. "It's arithmetic," Owen said. "He has less time than I do. That's the whole spreadsheet." Vincent Hale picked up his leather folder. He stood in the doorway of a room he had walked into 100 times as family. "For what it's worth," he said, "I never wanted anything for you but the easy version." "I know," Owen said. "That's the trouble with you." He didn't sign the Meadowlark contract. He didn't sell the house. He called Dallas and moved the March opening to June, and listened to a vice president explain what that would cost, and then he said fine and hung up and went downstairs. Small things changed. That was all. Nobody woke up cured. He started eating breakfast at 7 because that was when his father ate. He stopped talking about Walter in the third person while Walter was in the room. When Dr. Pham gave an update, Owen turned in his chair and said, "Dad, does that sound right?" And sometimes his father tapped the wall 3 times, and sometimes he looked out the window at the water, and sometimes he did nothing at all. Owen waited anyway. The waiting was the part that changed him. It slowed his voice down, it emptied his hands. He learned to fold. He was terrible at it. His left wing was clumsy, exactly the way hers was, and one morning in the kitchen Marisol looked at his sad little plane and laughed out loud before she could stop herself and then apologized for 11 straight seconds. "Don't," Owen said. "It's the first time I've heard you laugh." He brought it to his father. He put it in Walter's hands and said, "Dad, it's wrong, I can't remember." Walter Kessler turned the paper over. His thumb found the bad seam. His face did nothing, and then those hands opened it up, took out the fold and put it back the way it was supposed to be, and pressed it flat, and returned it to his son. Owen sat down on the floor beside the chair with the plane in his hands and stayed there a long while. "Sir," Marisol said from the doorway, later holding the tray. "You're getting better." "No," Owen said. "I'm late." She didn't argue with him. Some things don't want comfort. They went out on the first warm Saturday in November. It took 2 hours to get him in the car. Curtis Boone brought a blanket and pretended to need to check the tire pressure so he could stand there and watch. Marisol sat in the back with Walter and read him the produce order because the sound of a list is soothing. Deerpath Field was still there. Owen had assumed it wouldn't be. It was a strip of grass and one hangar and a windsock. 40 minutes northwest, and there had been a coffee counter run by a woman named Dot who was long dead. And there had been Sunday mornings, every single Sunday morning from 1985 to 1991. A boy and his father on the hood of a station wagon with a blue thermos between them, watching Cessnas come off the grass into the light. Owen had not thought about the blue thermos in 30 years. It had come back to him at 4 in the morning whole, with the dent in it. They wheeled the chair out to the fence line. The grass was wet, the air smelled like cut hay and Avis, and it went into Owen's lungs like a hand pushing open a door. His father was quiet. His hands lay on the blanket. They waited 11 minutes. Then a red and white 172 lined up at the far end, and the engine came up, and the little plane rolled and lifted and banked out over the trees, and the sound rolled across the field and hit the fence and hit the 3 of them standing there. Walter Kessler raised his hand. He raised it slowly into the air, palm out following the wing, the way a man does when he knows what is holding the airplane up, and he smiled. He did not say where they were. He did not say the name of the field or the year or the boy in the passenger seat with cocoa on his chin. He never said any of it that day or after. Owen crouched down beside the chair and took a folded sheet of paper out of his coat pocket and put it in his father's hands ends. Walter's fingers began to move, fold, turn. Thumbnail down the seam, pinch, tuck, press. He held it up. He turned it, checking the wing against the light. Owen watched his father's face and understood that he was about to find out, in front of God and Curtis Boone and one running windsock, whether 30 years of Sundays he never came back for, had left anything at all. Walter Kessler moved the paper airplane through the air. He pointed the nose at his son. He held it there. He looked at Owen for a long moment, and there was nothing in his eyes that a doctor would write down, and everything that a boy would. Then he reached across and pressed it into Owen's hand, and folded Owen's fingers around it, and did not let go. Marisol turned away toward the field, and put her hand over her mouth. Owen Kessler knelt on the wet grass in a $5,000 coat, holding a piece of paper that had been folded by a man who could not remember his own address, and wept the way he had not wept at his mother's funeral, the way he had not wept once in 47 years, silently, with his forehead against his father's knee. Walter put his hand on the back of his son's head. His hands remembered that too. Owen had spent 19 years building rooms for strangers to feel at home. In 41 of them, across 11 states, with his father's name on every deed and his father's name on nothing he had ever actually given him. He had bought the man everything he needed. He had just never once been in the room. Sometimes the person carrying your family is the one you pay by the hour and pass in the hallway without looking up. Money buys care. It does not buy company. And the people who have forgotten your name have not forgotten whether you stayed. So go now, while there is still someone in the chair to hand something to. What would you have done if you were Owen? Tell me below. And if this story found you tonight, subscribe, and stay with us. There are more of them coming.